In this chapter, we're going to talk a little bit about personality and what it is, how it affects consumers, how it affects the decision making process, how it affects consumers' motivation, even, right? We're going to also talk a little bit about lifestyles towards the end of the chapter. Now, values, we're not going to tackle a little bit together, but there will be an exercise on that when we talk means and chain model, and you'll see it as part of the discussions. Now, first thing we're going to talk about is what is personality and how it will influence our marketing stimuli or the perception of marketing stimuli and things like that. Now, by definition, when we're talking personality, we mean the psychological makeup of a consumer, as in how they're built internally, their brains, their thinking, their thoughts, things like that. And that's something that always influences how they act, how they think, and if we're talking marketing, how they buy things, how they choose things, how they evaluate brands, and things like that. There are several theories that discuss how personality is formed or what kind of forms that personality that you have or shapes the personality that you have. And we're going to talk about a number of them in the slides to come. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is Freudian theory, which is a motivational research type of theory. And for Freud, and I'm sure you've all heard of Freud, your personality is formed based on a conflict between three entities inside your head. The id, which is that part of you that is all about instant or immediate gratification. It's the pleasure principle, that's what we call it. So it wants satisfaction now, regardless of consequences or regardless of social pressure or social risk or anything like that. The id is selfish and the id is illogical. And that's the first entity. The second one is going to be your superego. The superego is the counterweight to the id. It's the exact opposite. It's your conscience. And with this one, it's about society and social rules and what's okay to do and what's not okay to do. And it always tries to stop the id from seeking instant gratification. The third one is the ego. And the ego is that system that tries to mediate between the earlier two, the id and the superego. It's what we call the reality principle. It tries to satisfy both using some compromise, kind of, to make sure that everyone's going to be happy. Okay? And it's this conflict between all those kind of three entities that creates your personality. Based on Freud, a lot of your purchases are based on what we call hidden motives, as in there's something going on behind the scenes in your head at the unconscious level that you don't know of, but it's driving you to consume what you consume or buy what you buy or seek what you seek or choose the brands that you choose. It's all hidden. Now, so far it might make sense, right? I mean, I'm sure we can always find a hidden motive behind a lot of our purchases. But here's the problem with Freudian theory. To Freud, most of those hidden motives are actually sexual, and that's where it gets a little bit perverted, to be honest with you. But that's the reality for Freud. That's what personality is, that's how your brain works, and that's how hidden conflicts that are mostly sexual, sorry, hidden motives that are mostly sexual shape your behavior. Now, Freud helped develop a whole school of thought, which is the motivational research. And that research is plentiful. There's a lot of research on a lot of topics, and you can see them here in the slides in front of you, whether it's femininity or power and masculinity or security and things like that. And they've all been proven to be motives from a motivational research perspective. Like they do studies on them and show that, yep, this is a hidden motive usually that makes you buy things you don't usually buy. Anyways, that's Freud's school of thought. Now, this is from your book. This is a summary of what kind of products you might be buying due to any hidden motive that you might have. And it's really interesting, guys. So, for power, for example, if that's the motive you have hidden in there, you'll be buying sugary product. You'll be buying or consuming large breakfasts. You might go bowling. You might like electric trains. Again, it's really interesting. And here's what's even funnier. Eroticism, if it's a hidden motive, then you buy sweets. You wear gloves. A man lighting a woman's cigarette, things like that. Okay? Anyways, you can go through them. They're in the book. If you don't have the book, freeze the screen and you can go through these. They're very interesting. In motivational research, Freud was followed by many more researchers. We call them neo-Freudian. They're kind of the new Freuds. They have a little bit more modern interpretation of how personality works and how your brain works, but they're still motivational research, research, research kind of scientists or researchers. So, for example, for Karen Horney, it's not the id and the ego and the superego and a conflict. No, it's you being in a conflict between being compliant versus being detached versus being aggressive. For Alfred Adler, I'm sorry about that, it's mainly your motivation to overcome inferiority. That's what shapes who you are. For Harry Sullivan, it's personality evolving from the anxieties that you have. All you do is to reduce all the anxieties that you have. But the most interesting one is the last one, and I'm sure you've heard of him, Carl Jung. Carl Jung is a neo-Freudian, but he kind of formed a completely new school of thought that we're going to call analytical psychology. And Jung, we're going to talk a lot about in details after this slide, but this is just some of the criticism for motivational research and at the same time some pros for Freudian research and motivational research. Because again, people still do it. There's a reason why they still do it if they're in that field. It's, for example, it's less expensive, especially when you do surveys. It's a powerful hook for promotion, right? Hidden motives and anything along these lines is a very interesting area when it comes to promotion. Symbolism is used a lot in advertising, and symbolism is kind of at the core of what motivational research talks about. So it's a powerful hook. Sometimes the findings are plausible, and sometimes they're getting better validity. Okay? Now, the problem with validity is, because you see it also here with the criticism, is that they're getting validity but with other techniques. They're not trying to support validity in their surveys and in the scales that they use. And that's why you see it here as part of the problems. But the other bigger problem, or the biggest criticism, to be honest, is the fact that they're too sexually based. Right? That's why we always call Freud a pervert. Anyways, now this wraps up this part of the chapter, the first set of slides, and I'll see you in the next set of slides, where we'll talk in more details about Carl Jung and analytical psychology.